Weird science
is the revolution.
Welcome all you marvelous Marvelites to the Weird Science Marvel podcast. My name is Zach, and I'm here today to give you a solo review of Beware of the Planet of the Apes, number 1. Now before I start, I do need to mention that this book is a prequel to the original Planet of the Apes movie. I think that's worth mentioning since the last comic series that Marvel did for Planet of the Apes was tying into the Matt Reeves movies. So I just wanted to let y'all know. But anyway, this is Beware of the Planet of the Apes number 1, written by Mark Guggenheim of Arrow fame, for those of you who know about him, with art by Alvaro Lopez, colors by Alex Guimarães, and letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. We also have some pages from the original comic series from the 70s, Adventures of the Planet of the Apes. That series was written by Doug Munch with art by George Tusca, inks by Mike Esposito, Tony Mortallera, and Dave Hunt, with colors by George Rousseau's. The reason I'm giving them credits too is because there's quite a few panels and pages in this comic that use that artwork from the original series, so I wanted to give them their due credit. So this series is the prequel to the very original Planet of the Apes movies, but thankfully it has a lot of the familiar characters, such as like Zira and Cornelius, Nova even. So, but we start out with pages from the original comic showing astronaut Taylor landing, and it's basically just 2 or 3 pages of like, oh hey, he's landing, and he discovers what's happened to humanity. He discovered about the apes, finds the Statue of Liberty. So we get all that for the first 2 or 3 pages. It's just a recap of like, hey, here's the movie if you've never seen the movie. Now we're going to go back before the movie. So it's a little jarring, especially if you're just like, oh, I thought this was a prequel. It is. It takes the time in the first few pages to be like, hey, this is where we're going to end up. So it can be a little jarring, but anyway, we go back to before the events of the movie, where we see Nova. She's part of her tribe out in the wild, and a bunch of ape soldiers come to ambush and try and capture them. Nova is running. She's starting to head off the other direction from her tribe when she runs into an ape. But thankfully, this is Lucius. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Lucius, that is the nephew of Zira, and he is a human sympathizer as well. So he agrees to hide her. He hides her in this bush. Some ape soldiers come up, and they're like, hey, we heard you talking. Who were you talking to? Were you helping a human? And he's like, oh no, I was just talking out loud. I saw this flower called Nalgo, and it's really rare. It's very hard to find. I just was excited. Sorry. And they look at me like, oh, you're an idiot. And so they run off, and they tell him to go home. Now, Lucius begins to follow their advice when he gets abducted by a shadowy figure that we do not see. And that's the last we see of Lucius. Now, the comic then transitions to 28 hours later, and Zira is freaking out over her nephew's disappearance. And she goes to Cornelius, her fiance, the male archaeologist for the apes. And she's like, please, will you help me find him? Can you ask around? So Cornelius does, and he starts asking around, and then eventually he finds one of the ape soldiers, one of the ones that talked to Lucius the night he disappeared. And he's like, oh, I think he was helping humans or messing with them. I don't know. It's no wonder he disappeared. I ought to run him in or whatever. And so he tells Cornelius where Lucius last was. So Cornelius mounts a horse and he heads out that way. And as he's searching, he ends up discovering Nova still hiding in the bush that Lucius told her to. So he begins trying to talk to her. And I didn't mention, but Lucius did talk to Nova just for a second. And he did say, my name is Lucius, and tried to pronounce it for her. So when Cornelius comes out, he's like, look, I'm looking for my nephew Lucius. And she immediately recognizes the name, and she points to the Forbidden Zone. And Cornelius is like, what? He went in there? And the Forbidden Zone's a big no-no. You don't go in the Forbidden Zone according to the ape laws. So now he's faced with a conundrum. So he goes back home. He leaves Nova there, lets her be. He goes back to the Ape Society, goes back to Zira, and he talks to her, and he talks to Zaius, which is kind of like this chief scientist there, and he's trying to negotiate with Zaius and be like, we need to mount an expedition into the Forbidden Zone, and we need to find Lucius. And Zaius is like, if he went into the Forbidden Zone, it was foolhardy of him. He was an idiot, and I don't think he's an idiot. He's like, odds are he's running around in the wild somewhere, but do not go into the Forbidden Zone. It is forbidden. You do not have my blessing. Do not, I'm going to pretend I never even heard this. And so Zaius just walks away. Zira is like, nope, screw that. I am going after him in the Forbidden Zone. I don't care. I'm going. And at first Cornelius is hesitant. He's like, but it goes against our laws and our traditions, and we're supposed to respect it. And she's like, it is my nephew. I am going. So Cornelius ends up eventually meeting her out there because he can't help it. He's like, I can't leave Lucius here, and I can't leave you out here all alone by yourself too. So they're starting to head out that way when they think, well, maybe we need to go get Nova. And just to mention it, Nova does not have a name in this. Cornelius calls her Dark Eyes, which, okay, reason I'm kind of upset about that. It's supposed to try and be a like homage to Astronaut Taylor calling her Bright Eyes, but it's the opposite. And I get you don't want to do the whole like, oh, the exact same word, but like it's also like one person thinks she has dark eyes, another thinks they have bright eyes, and it's kind of like a pointless pandering moment. I don't like it. I don't know. I get that he needed a name for her, but he could have just said Savage Woman. You know, he could have said anything. So anyway, they decide, hey, we need her help. Because she saw where he went, and she's probably more familiar with the Forbidden Zone than we are. So they decide we're going to go back to where she was hiding. We're going to recruit her and let her be our guide. So they get there. They discover she's not there anymore, but they do discover that there is a tunnel near there. Cornelius at first excited. He's like, oh, these are ancient structures. I really need to get a archaeology group out here to study these and everything. And Zira's like, who cares? We need to keep moving. We need to find this woman so we can find Lucius. So they press on, and they eventually get attacked by Nova. And Nova, she didn't know it was Cornelius. So she attacks them thinking they're here to hurt her. But once she realizes that they mean no harm, she quickly becomes docile. And Cornelius tries to reason with her. And of course she can't talk, but he's basically like, hey, we'll give you food if you take us to the Forbidden Zone. And she's basically like, nope, 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 nope. And so he's like, okay, how about this? What if I take you back to your tribe? And Zira's immediately like, oh, hold up. What do you mean you're going to take her back to her tribe? And Cornelius is like, I know where some of them have hidden themselves. Like, you know, where a tribe has hidden in the wild. I will take her to that tribe. And Zira's like, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to report that to the ape soldiers and everything, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, they mean no harm. They're simple animals out there. You know, he's like, I let them be. I discovered them on one of my archaeology trips. I figured, what's the harm? He's like, so I will take you there. And apparently Nova understands this, so she agrees. So they end up heading out towards the Forbidden Zone on horseback, and they do a long trek over a day and night, and eventually they are in the Forbidden Zone, and they come across this ancient structure, Yankee Stadium. And Cornelius, he is just so fascinated. He's like, oh my God, this is beautiful. Look at this beautiful structure. I mean, this must be thousands of years old. But anyway, and while he's marveling over it, we see that there are these two strange people or figures hiding in the stadium, watching them through a sniper scope. And they talk among themselves about, should we kill them? And we're not sure if they're apes or humans. Let's just kill them and find out after the fact. And it's worth mentioning that these figures are dressed head to toe in like sand garb, like desert garb. So you cannot see what they look like. You can't tell if they're human. You can't tell if they are apes. So, but they put the crosshairs on Zira and they're about to fire, and that's how the comic ends. Now, I don't have a problem with this comic, really. I enjoyed it for the most part. I wouldn't say that there's really a hook. You know, like, sure, you could be like, oh, well, I care about what happens to Lucius. I don't, it's not that I don't care. It's just, I don't care. You know, I mean, Lucius, he's just such a side character, especially if you read the original comics. Now, I've only seen the original movie and read the original comics by Doug Munch. So Lucius in there was very much, he was just kind of like a snippy sidekick, you know, witty sidekick, whatever you want to call him. You know, he wasn't that consequential. I mean, like, sure, you could say he was fun, but I mean, like, I don't know. I don't need the whole book to be about this. And plus, it also deals with Zira and Cornelius dealing with Nova before the events of Planet of the Apes. That can get a little dicey. Yes, they're familiar with her, but it's not like, oh, hey, we went on an adventure with you kind of familiar. The familiarity from the movie's more like, oh, we've seen her in the cages before kind of thing, you know? So that's playing with that a little bit. I think it's good overall. Yeah, I don't really know how to feel about it. The artwork's good. I do like that they use the original comic pages from the original Marvel series. And honestly, if you have not watched the original Planet of the Apes movie, you could easily read that comic and be able to do this. Because even when you read the splash page for like, oh, previously in Planet of the Apes, they go through the whole, basically everything that happened in that Marvel comic book they talk about. So you could easily just read that, then read this. It looks like Guggenheim's a huge fan of that comic series, so that's cool. That is really cool. Do I say you gotta read it? No. If I had to give it a score, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10, and I don't want to say that's generous, but I think it is maybe just a little because it's banking on the fact you're an original Planet of the Apes fan. And, like, sure, you know, a lot of people have seen the original movie. That's a given. But have they read the original comic? Have they, you know, do they know these characters? Because here's the thing, before reading this, I had just a passing familiarity. I couldn't always tell you, oh, hey, that's Cornelius. Oh, that's Zira. Oh, that's so-and-so. You know, it was Dr. Zaius. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did a little bit of research into this, trying to prepare for the podcast. So, I don't know. I hate to say that you'd have to do the same research. I think as long as you watch the original movie, or if you read the Doug Munch series, I think you'll be good. But, yeah. Art's good, color's good, story's pretty decent, just it's not anything that's gonna grab you though. So that's a 7 out of 10 for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll talk to you all later.
Hey all you weirdos, if you like comic book shows, podcasts, videos, please check the description of this video where you can see links to all of our podcast shows, websites, all of that. And if you want to help us out for everything that we do, you can click on that Patreon link in the upper left-hand corner and check out our Patreon, where you can go right now and get a 7-day free trial to see all the stuff that we do, shows that are Marvel, DC, indie, manga, and even more. So check all that out, and I'll talk to you all later.
Weird science
is the revolution.